Well, a very good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the first show. Another one of its unique changes that will be coming to you every morning. Now the time changes. Tomorrow, you never know what else may change. I'm glad to be here on set with you, and I'm glad that we started our morning very early like this, and we're starting it together. Now, for those who are still in bed, wake up, wake up, wake up. It is time to start your day. It is time to launch that day. It is time to be the early worm that catches the worm, the early bird that catches the worm. So wake up, catch that worm, feed it to your young ones, or feed it to yourself, and make yourself a future. Simon Chris usually says, the sweeter the bed, the better the future, or however he usually says it. But I mean, the whole concept of it is the more you sleep, the worse it is for you, because you're going to fail to plan for your future. And our first show is supposed to be exemplary to you and show you that, you know what, Muzuku, let's start the day together. Let's take a cup of coffee. Let's take juice for those who don't take coffee. Let's, do things together one step at a time. And then we will grow together and make this country a better place. Patriotism. How patriotic are you about your country is one of the questions that we ask ourselves. I mean, a lot of things that I do on the first show reminds me, of course, of the other people I work with, because they're sayings that we had together as a team. I remember we were talking about what do you love about Uganda? And we had callers who would say the most weird things about their country. But hey, here's what I love about Uganda: the climate. Lord, the climate is amazing. And that is why they call it the Pearl of Africa. Go out right now and look at how windy it is. It looks like it's going to rain, though. As I am celebrating the climate, it looks like the weather is a bit shaky. It looks like it's going to rain. So as you're leaving home, although I'm not a weather woman, as you're leaving home, get out with your umbrella, get out with your jacket, get out with your boots, clad and ready to start your day. Now, here's what happens on the first show. For you who has joined us for the first time, and you're wondering, what is that woman doing on screen, and what is she telling us? Here's what happens on the first show. So we wake up in the morning. We come and sit on set. We talk about the news that is spreading on social media, on Instagram, on Twitter, on WhatsApp, on Opera News, on whether it's true or not. Here's what we do. We demystify the truth or untruth of that particular news item, and we tell you whether it's true or not. So we come here, we talk about the situation in the country. What is the trending story? What was the trending story? And what continues to be the trending story? Now, that is the trend of the first show. And then later we look at, okay, so we've talked about social media. We've talked about what's trending on social media. So now what is trending in the newspapers? So we look through the newspapers, one page after the other, go through the stories, find out who is doing what in the newspapers, who is saying what in the newspapers. And then after that, Angie comes in and shows us her lifestyle segment, whereby we have her telling us a number of very, very important information. So we come from the book of the day. Personally, I love the book of the day. It gives me titles of which books to read. Ladies and gentlemen, you have no excuse whatsoever not to read. Here's the thing about reading, and I think I've learned it with time. Ask me about my culture of reading, and I'll tell you my mom instilled the culture of reading in me. I would see her curl in a corner in the living room holding her book and reading. Most of it was novels, really, and she'd curl in a corner and read. So every time I saw her reading as a child, I thought, I want to be like mommy. I want to read books. So I'd also get my small book, curl in a corner, copy her, and read. Now, this teaches us one thing as parents, is that we should know that our children do not do what we tell them, word, speech. They copy what you do. You cannot tell them pray and you don't pray. You cannot tell them read and you don't read. You cannot tell them be good, do not lie. And every day of your life, you're lying. You're lying about the smallest things, about not going to work, about why you were at home, about small things that if you had told the child the truth, they would have understood. They wouldn't have taken you for granted. Well, it's time that parents understand that in those little kids' brains, it's just a world of their own. A world whereby, literally, they think in their own space. And these are adults, in their own, grooming, in their own growth. These are adults. They understand things their own way, but man, do they understand. These kids understand. So it's time for you to speak to them like you're speaking to an adult. If you do not have money to buy chicken for them today, if you do not have money to buy KFC, if you do not have money to buy them burgers, tell them the truth. Tell them, baby, I know you want a burger, but mommy does not have that money. Daddy does not have that money. But hey, I will work triple hard next week to ensure that you get that money. Take them to your workplaces. Let them see your hustle. Let them learn your hustle. Let them know what you're going through to get that money. Let them appreciate where that money is coming from. Word of thought. So going back to the story I was telling you about where I got my reading culture. So I saw my mom doing it, and I started doing it. And from me to you, you better start reading. There's a saying that if you want to hide something from an African, put it in a book. If you want to hide information, if you want to hide their rights, because hey, your rights are in the Constitution. You want to know what your rights are? You want to know that no policeman has the right to put you in cells for more than 24 hours without taking you to court. You want to know that you have the right to a lot of things. And when a police officer stops you and tells you, I'm taking your number plate, you tell them you do not have the right to do that. Only when you know your right. Now, when you do not know your right, then people take advantage of you. Read the Constitution. Make it a habit. Wake up in the morning. One line of the Constitution. Understand it, internalize it, teach it. That's the trick. In order for you to understand what exactly is happening in the Constitution, I will repeat the process. Read one line, internalize it, understand it, teach it. Now that is the process, that is the progress. It's one step at a time. You have a book, one step at a time. You want to learn something? One step at a time. And that's the process. It's one step at a time. Baby steps. No need to rush. You want to start exercising. It's one step at a time. It's saying, I'll wake up today and do 10 squats. I'll wake up today and do 10 sit-ups. I'll wake up today and do not rush yourself to doing more than you can do. Do not eat bread that will suffocate you. Eat piece by piece until you get full. The digestion also is an important part of the body. But here's the thing. You have a phone, and that is why I actually have my phone with me. Because, see, the secret in these phones is they can make you or they can break you. Because you're holding your phone and it is your whole world, day in, day out. This is the gadget that we keep closest to ourselves. Speak of addiction. Forget drug addiction. Forget alcohol addiction. Forget the other types of addiction, of course, that I can't be talking about on set right now. Forget those addictions. And then let's look at an addiction that is called the phone, the internet. Now that addiction is crazy. It's full-time addictive, and there's no rehab that you can go to deal with the addiction that you get when you have your phone near you. Now, that addiction is unique to itself. It's up to you to handle it. If you can't handle it, then how do we use it? To our own benefit is the question. Now, how you use it to your own benefit is, you can read online books. Did you know that? Get yourself an online book. Get a title from Angie when she comes on set and tells us the book of the day. Get a title from Angie. Google it. Your phone, in your hands. Google it. Get yourself that book and read. Like I said, no need to rush. Take your time. Breathe in, breathe out. One paragraph. When you go back home after a long day at work, when you make that smoothie, when you make that cup of coffee, relax. Read one paragraph, just one paragraph. Read it out loud. Or there's actually the option of audiobooks. Use audiobooks. Read those books and learn something. Every time I read, there's new information I learn. And I tell myself, I should have done better. I should have read better. I should have known better. Now that is a trick I'm giving you this morning, and hopefully it will work for you. Now, like I told you earlier, there's stories that are on social media. The question is, how do you consume those stories? Because that is important. There are allegations. In journalism, we call it allegations. Now, allegations are words spoken without facts, without evidence to back up those facts. Now, those are allegations. Stop following up on allegations and look at facts. Look at the November 18th chaos that caused a number of people to be arrested, over 40 in Kalangala in December. And they said most of those people were in charge of the chaos that happened. Now, according to police investigations, the people who were arrested on December 12, 2020 in Kalangala, some of them were in Masaka, and as I'm speaking, some of them are in Chitalia prison. Now, those are the people, they say, bought tires. Now, we saw there was a truck that was parked, according to social media. There was a truck that was parked, and people were offloading tires, one after the other. One after the other, people were offloading tires. And then they would burn the tire in the middle of the road. They would burn buildings. They would hit cars. And I'm breathing because, see, the picture during the November 18th chaos was very graphic. Graphic that a lot of us will be thinking about it in our heads, day in, day out, and remembering November 18th as a milestone in the Ugandan political system and Ugandan elections, where we saw over 54 people lose their lives. Now, out of the 54, some of them, or most of them, were not part of the riots. Most of them were innocent women who had gone to make a living for their children. See, I'm struggling to smile and keep the conversation going. They were struggling to make a living for their children. They had gone to work, they had gone to try and make a living. People in the market, you know, and then they were shot by stray bullets. Stray bullets that they were using to disperse the crowds. By tear gas. Tear gas that some of you thought you could hold in your hands and throw back. People were hurt. People were killed. The country lost a number of valuable people. The country lost parents. The country lost brothers. The country lost sisters. The country lost daughters and sons. And as we are speaking, 34 of those daughters and sons are still in prison. And the court-martial said they will not be giving them bail. Now, yesterday, during the bulletin that I anchored, and that was at 8:45 p.m., and that is Select News, we had that story run. And that story was about NUP lawyers going to court and taking the case from court-martial to the High Court. Look at the sarcasm in this story. So here's the thing. Robert Kyagulanyi decided that he was going to take the petition that he took to High Court and he was going to withdraw it. Meanwhile, Malema Birizi was thinking, I am going to the East African Court. And while I'm in the East African Court, I will tell them that Justice Alfonso Owinyi Dollo has refused to recuse himself. And he's telling Bobi Wine, why did you rush to withdraw that petition? We could have gone through. We could have had Justice Alfonso Owinyi Dollo pulled out of this petition. And maybe you could have won. Why did you pull out the petition? Now that was only to show you that there's the High Court that Bobi Wine is doubting. However, the NUP supporters who have been in jail since December 12th till now are now saying enough is enough and the court-martial is being unfair. Now, among the charges that was slapped on them was, of course, causing chaos, causing unrest, destroying property, and among them, the 4 rounds of ammunition that was found on them. Now, that is an allegation that was slapped on them by police. Now, yesterday we did that story, and of course, my producer, Husna Feti, will be taking us through that particular story of where the NUP supporters took the case from the court-martial in Marchindia to High Court, citing unfairness, citing bias. They say they have the legal right to get themselves bail, but they have refused to give them bail. So what next? High Court. What is the High Court? The petition withdraw and doubting of the justices. This story is interesting. Let's keep following it up and seeing how it goes.
Proceedings between Judge Alfonso Owinyi Dollo and Counsel Hassan Male Mabirizi as Male opens a petition against Dollo in the East African Court over his refusal to recuse himself of the electoral petition.
At East African Court of Justice, Sub-Registry in Kampala, located at Supreme Court of Uganda. I've just filed my reference in the East African Court of Justice, challenging the refusal by Owinyi Dollo to recuse himself from Kyagulanyi Museveni case. That decision he made on 23rd last week. He said he's not recusing himself from the case, but that he will give the reasons later.
The controversial city lawyer has called upon the Supreme Court's indefinite halt of the Kyagulanyis versus Museveni electoral petition case, awaiting the East African Court's ruling.
So from there, I've come to the Supreme Court down and now applied for halting, for stay of proceedings now in the Kyagulanyi Museveni petition pending before the Supreme Court until the dispute in the East African Court of Justice is resolved, which dispute revolves around Owinyi Dollo's refusal to recuse. And that is premised on Article 38, Sub-Article 2 of the East African Treaty, which says that when a matter has been referred to the court, the partners shall restrain themselves from aggravating the situation.
Mabirizi, in satisfying his action, explained that he is only following the rightful procedures. He expressed disregard over NUPU's decision to withdraw the petition.
Ekoti y'abantu erina gy'etuula. Abantu tubawa leadership, abantu balina rolo yaabwe ey'okukola mu society nyingi, kwekalakaasa, kulonda, kudemonstrating, nga leero oyinza bayita kooti. Bo ng'abantu mwatuka wano ya constitution balina obuyinza bwabwe obaweebwa era basobola obukozesa mu ngeri yonna. With a
little bit of patience, Snoop could have won this, he muttered. Mabirizi also says he wants court to interpret Dollo's acts of refusal to recuse himself, which according to Male are against the East African Court of Law.
When a country signs a treaty with other countries, that treaty supersedes its own law, because now it's a relationship between countries. Now, the East African Committed Treaty takes precedence over Ugandan constitution. So that if Uganda has its own rules, for example, 45 days, those rules apply as long as they don't contradict the treaty. But in this case, we say yes, it's granted. You have your 60 days rule, you have 45 days rule. But we are saying you are contravening the East African Treaty. You are proceeding in a manner which is illegal.
Maria Dana Namiro for Select News.
The story that we ran on Male Mabirizi taking the petition to the East African Court. Of course, later on in the day, we'll be discussing what is the East African Court. What are some of the justices that have just joined the East African Court, and which justices from these other countries are in the East African Court? Now, all that we'll be discussing on the first show, and then we'll be discussing the East African Coalition. How ready is Uganda to jump into the East African Coalition? How ready is the other countries to form a coalition? We're looking at a bloc, a political bloc, but how ready are we? Now, all those questions will come in later, and of course, we'll have to engage you, our viewers, in this particular session of how ready are we in this, East African bloc, East African Federation, East African Coalition. They had a meeting, a virtual meeting on Saturday where Kenya attended, Tanzania attended, DRC attended, Uganda attended, Rwanda attended, and Kenya attended. Now, all that, I don't want to go into the details now. Of course, we'll talk about it later. But then let's talk about the 18th of November, and that is why I brought the Male Mabirizi case. And of course, because of the 18th of November case, we have the NUP people who were arrested, 36 of them, and they have not been let out. This is not the first time they were taken to bail. They were taken over and over and over again, and the court-martial kept denying them bail, saying that they are a threat to the peace of this country, and they will be causing chaos. Now, among the 36 people arrested, and I'll be reading you the names of the 36 people arrested, among them, of course, is Nubian Lee and Eddie Mutwe, the bodyguard of Robert Kyagulanyi. If you ask me who Nubian Lee is, of course, Nubian Lee is the famous singing partner of Robert Kyagulanyi when he was still just a musician, or a politician versus a musician. And now he has put his music aside to concentrate on his politics. Now, a lot has been happening in the country. Whenever I'm talking about Robert Kyagulanyi, one story or the other pops up in my head, and I'm trying to control my thoughts to try and keep them in line with what we're talking about. Now, the Malema Birizi story and the people who were arrested came in as a thought or a line of thought to social media platforms and how they're dangerous to us and how we should be careful when we're using social media platforms. Look at the example of this. Now, on 18th of November, what caused the chaos is a number of people going on their Facebook Live, going on their Twitter, going on their Instagram, and telling people Robert Kyagulanyi has been arrested and he has been stabbed. And the country went crazy. His supporters went crazy. We're not going to allow Robert Kyagulanyi to be arrested. However, when Robert Kyagulanyi was arrested, we all remember he kept saying, we're peaceful, loving people. We are peaceful, loving people. We are peaceful, loving people. He kept repeating it. And the message was, of course, going to his supporters, and he was telling them we're peaceful, loving people, and we shouldn't start chaos. Now, of course, after he came out, he kept telling them that we shouldn't have started chaos. We're peaceful, loving people. I'm out of the cells. Let me be. We remember the Interreligious Council came up and how to talk about it. They talked about the fact that they needed to release Robert Kyagulanyi because the chaos promised to continue as long as Robert Kyagulanyi was held in prison. We also remember that there were very, very many tankers that kept moving in town. Security was tight in town. Anytime you'd hear a tear gas can or tear gas canister going up. Anytime you'd hear bullets. Anytime, it looked like we were at a war. That's what it looked like. But again, peace has been restored, and Robert Kyagulanyi keeps repeating that we are peace-loving people and we should continue loving peace. Now, why I am looking at the list in my hands right now is I'm trying to find you exactly the names of the people that were arrested, because we only know the two people. And that is Eddie Mutwe and Nubian Lee are the two people that we know. However, let's go through the list of the people who were arrested. And for those who, of course, have their families out there and they're figuring out who is where and who is not where, this is the list of people that was arrested. Now, among them, and they have very funny names. Among them, we have Hassan Semakula, also known as Abdu Soldier. We have Kenny Chalimpa, also we have Robinson Mudentambi, we have Lukman Mwijuche, also known as Kampala, we have William Nyazi, also known as Mbogo, we have Muhammad Nsubuga, also known as Edobozi, we have Ali Buken, also known as Nubian Lee, we had Edward Sebufu, also known as Eddie Mutwe, Adam Matovu, Shakira Nambozo, Ibra Tamale, Muzafaru Mwanga, also known as Main Get Mwa. We have Stanley Kafuko, we have Achilio Chivumbi, we have Geoffrey Onzima, we have Anthony Agaba, we have Robert Chivumbi, we have Samson Sebiranda, we have Naja alias Don Sharif, we have Brian Semanda, and a lot of other people, Charles Mpanga, Geoffrey Mutalia, we have Geserwa Chabagu, we have Faisal Chigongo, and all those names that will be coming up, of course, that will have run on our screens later on and on our social media platforms. Now, those are the people, the 49 suspects that were arrested, and according to police, some of them are still out there and they haven't been arrested. Out of the 49 of them, some of them were released, and we only have like 39 that are still in prison. Now, that story brings us back to what is happening on social media. What are you feeding yourself with? What information are you feeding yourself with? Now, for you who wants true information, information that comes straight from the source, information that is true, information that you won't doubt, tune in to STV on the different platforms that we have. We have it on Azam, Hamjambo, hali yenu, asanteni sana kuondoka na sisi. Those in Tanzania, we have Star Times, we have Go TV, we have Free to Air, and we have Satellite. In all the other platforms, we are present. We are present on Facebook, we are present on Twitter, we're present on Instagram, and our presence is highly felt. So if you can't find us on these platforms that I mentioned, then mwendeni kwenye social media platform, mtutafute na mtutizame. Manake tuna mengi sana tutakuwa tunawapa kila siku toka Monday mpaka Ijumaa, nikiwa naongea na nyinyi na wapa mambo mapya ambayo yametokea kwenye the news in Uganda, and that's the information we'll be giving you. Now there's information that we got, and I told you that information usually comes on the tip of our fingers, and that is our phones, and it is up to us to try and figure out that information, sieve it, and pick out what we should take, but you should be careful about what we're talking about. Now there's information about the death of the niece of Rebecca Kadaga, and she died a few days ago, that is yesterday, and according to reports, Uganda's parliament has been thrown into sad news of the Speaker Rebecca Alitwala Kadaga's niece's death. Now, reports coming in indicate that Sheila Kadaga, which is her name, comes about a few months, 3 or so, after the death of her only surviving brother. Now, Sheila passed on last night at International Hospital, where she had been admitted for over a week, and she had just finished high school. She was set to join Makerere University, and that's a report that we have. May her soul rest in eternal peace. Some of the reports that are spreading on social media are, this is Kadaga's daughter. That's what a lot of people are saying. But Kadaga does not have a daughter. The reports, the true reports, demystifying it is Kadaga's niece that she lost after a few months of losing her nephew. We pray as a nation that she becomes strong and that this particular information does not keep her away or sadden her from her job as the best female speaker that the country has ever had. I mean, that's if the country has had another female speaker. And then the other information that we're getting that, of course, we'll need to demystify, but for now, we're just going to target as allegations. Now, the allegations are that Byabakama, the man himself who manned the elections, could be positive with COVID-19. And the reason why he left the seat and moved forward and left it with Aisha Lwega is because he was feeling weak and he was losing weight. Now, they say Justice Simon Byabakama apparently was proclaimed with COVID-19 after he read the results, and that is why he went off. Now, speculations were that Justice Simon Byabakama felt guilty about the results that he read. I mean, social media has a lot of information. The speculations are that he felt guilty about reading wrong results and he went for a vacation. However, the information that we're getting here, which are also allegations, is that Justice Simon Byabakama, was not feeling well and he tested positive for COVID-19, and that is why he went into isolation and he went into resting, giving Aisha Lwega the mantle of Electoral Commission. Now, we'll be clarifying that story later in our bulletin, and we'll be bringing you the truth behind that story. Again, if you want the truth in what you're listening to, join the first show every Monday to Friday, and you'll be getting the truth behind these informations that are circulating in media. Now, the other story that got my attention, as of course we're going through what got our attention from the Monday bulletin, the other story that got my attention was, of course, the parliamentary seating, whereby Geoffrey Nwagawa is insisting that there should be some changes that are made. Among the changes that they're asking for, of course, is army being pulled out of parliament. We know that the army has 10 representatives. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 representatives in parliament. And the argument is that the army has to be non-partisan. And that is what the argument is based on. And they're saying, if the army comes into parliament, and then they listen to arguments from both sides, the opposition and the other side. What will happen is the parliament is going, the 10 members of army in the parliament will pick sides, and yet they're not supposed to pick sides. So they're asking that those people be removed. Now we move forward from there. The other recommendation from Nuwagaba and his team is that Rebecca Kadaga and Oulanya get 3 representatives from Parliament to help them run the speakership position when they're not around. Now, according to the stories we are getting, is that Rebecca Kadaga is not so sure about that recommendation because, according to her and other members of Parliament who think this recommendation does not make sense, say that the speakership position is very much sought for. And their fear is that if they ever give any other person the power to hold and run the parliamentary sittings, then they may try to oust Rebecca Kadaga. However, the argument is that in 1998 and 2001, we had a member of parliament who suggested the same. And they're saying, now that it's coming back, can we consider it? Can we look at it? Can we think about it? Because in 2018, Rebecca Kadaga and Oulanya both traveled outside the country, leaving the parliament paralyzed. And there was no one to sit in for them, and that means that the parliamentary position was not, the speakership position was not held, and that means a number of them had nothing to do about it, and the parliamentary sitting was cancelled until they came back. Now, aside from the fact that we're making these recommendations, we know that Rebecca Kadaga and Oulanya are pulling ropes, and everybody is saying that I want to be the speaker, and there's a competition going on the speakership position. Rebecca Kadaga says, I will hold on to this position because I have done an amazing job since then. And the other members of parliament are saying, Rebecca Kadaga, look, we're not trying to take the position away from you. All we are asking is that we have 3 representatives who stand in for you when you're not there, like what happened in 2018. Now, Rebecca Kadaga and the Deputy Speaker, Oulanya, have been having issues. They've been pulling ropes. And we know there's a time that Rebecca Kadaga actually closed Oulanya out of the chambers. Now, she says Oulanya is not helping her whatsoever in running the jobs, the management work of the parliament. And she says there's a time that Oulanya traveled out of the country without informing her. He went to England, and she had to run solo for a very long time. So it's very useless for her to have a deputy. Now, here's the thing. Why would she not want a deputy? And then the recommendations that are coming are that she should have 3 representatives to take her through it. And the recommendations, of course, are that these representatives should be taken out of the parliamentary commission. And some of the members of parliament are arguing that if this position is given to, say, the people in the opposition and the people in the government, that only means that it will balance the board. And the Rebecca Kadaga's position will be held safe. And then they're saying that the others are saying this conversation shouldn't be based on an individual basis, Rebecca Kadaga versus Oulanya, but they should look at the good of the nation. Kenya has it, Rwanda has it, which other country? Democratic Republic of Congo, I'm not too sure about it, but those 2 countries that I'm sure about have 3 representatives who sit in for the speaker, who may fall sick, who may die, God forbid, who may have affairs to run, who may have relatives pass away and she has to go for burial. So someone else has to sit for them. My sister calls them a doppelganger. Everybody should have a doppelganger for them, a double someone who sits in for them when they're unable to be there, an assistant of some sort. But if Rebecca Kadaga is with Oulanya and they're fighting for that position, what happens to the 3 people? Now, we'll be bringing you the updates to that. However, the parliamentary position consists of the speaker, the deputy speaker, the leader of government business, the leader of opposition, and the 4 MPs from opposition. Now, the 10th parliament will be moving out of the parliamentary house in May. And in May, the 11th parliament will be moving in. Now, 11th parliament, of course, will have the different people from the NUP taking most of the seats, and they will take the position of the chief whip, the leader of opposition, and all the other, all the other positions that people who are in the opposition and have won the majority of the seats will be taking. Now, when we look at the other story that, of course, made the headlines for me as we're going through the stories that we ran, of course, in news yesterday, we had the reopening of schools. Who isn't talking about the reopening of schools? Schools have reopened, and the UCE examinations started yesterday. However, there were rules and recommendations from the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Health. And then teachers are saying we are unable to follow these rules of recommendation. And then the students are saying we are unable to follow these rules of recommendations. And the parents are saying we are failing to follow these rules of recommendation. Now, we know that schools are saying that they need 50% of their tuition. And their reasoning behind it is that they are unable to pay lecturers or teachers. They are unable to pay the bills because now the bills have become bigger. See, when you enter a dormitory, there are 3 decas. And now the recommendation is that there should be 1 student per deca. 1 student per deca, which only means that it's too much. They need too much space for these students to be seated in a 10-meter distance, to be sleeping on a 1 meter, 1.2, 2-meter distance. And they're saying this is quite a lot of, expenses for them, especially the private schools, who says the government had promised them 2.4 trillion Ugandan shillings, but they're still not seeing that money. And they need a buffer. They need help from government because most of them have taken loans. They haven't studied, they haven't run schools since March last year till March this year, making it 1 year. And they're saying, look, we do not have money to run these things. We do not have money to run these schools. However, whether they wanted it or not, we have students who are sitting for their examinations, and the report that comes our way is that the number of students who are sitting for that examination has reduced because parents have failed to pay tuition. Now, Husna Feti, if you could play me the story from yesterday's news that was looking at, of course, the starting of schools. We had 2, one in Kasese and one in Kampala, where schools have started, but parents are complaining that they don't have money, and teachers are complaining that they are unable, headmasters and school owners are complaining that they are unable to hold this particular school session, and they're calling upon the government to open school for all students so that they can get the money. And of course, the students are saying we haven't learned enough and we're sitting for examinations. Let's watch the story and then we'll be back with more.
According to the board, a total of 1,181,940 candidates have registered with UNEB to sit for their primary 7, senior 4 and senior 6.
Besides examinations, that is for the Uganda Certificate of Education for the 2020 candidates, because like you're all aware, we had a challenge of the lockdown. So the candidates who are doing examinations right now are 2020 candidates, and these are 2020 examinations according to our calendar. We did start this morning with physics paper 3, and fine art paper 2 will be in the afternoon.
UNEB exhibited lenience for female students who became pregnant during the lockdown in giving them a 45 minutes extension during exams. SOPs put in place range from a 2-meter distance between students to recording temperatures, hand washing and sanitizing.
We have asked the head teachers and the heads of centers to ensure that the SOPs that were given to us by the Ministry of Health and also by the Ministry of Education are adhered to the letter. We are talking about hand hygiene. We are talking about ensuring that everybody who gets into the school is wearing their masks properly. And we also want to ensure that they do measure their temperatures and they record them. The board would like to caution against any form of examination malpractice and warn that this is culpable. We have also introduced a toll-free line, which is 0800-211-077. That is 0800-211-077. And members of the public can call this number to report any certain cases of malpractice.
Addressing the press on the seriousness of the matter, Fred Enanga, the police spokesperson, urged schools and parents. He also emphasized the enforcement of curfew and urged the general public to adhere to the rules.
And to outside the health provisions, we are starting to notice that this non-compliance to the curfew timings has allowed for crimes to start creeping back slowly. We've started registering especially simple robberies, people being attacked, especially those who find themselves delayed past 9 p.m.
The condition for candidates and semi-candidates resumption of school has been set by the government under strict guidelines with a timetable that will see them end. The condition for candidates and semi-candidates resumption of school has been set by government under strict guidelines with a timetable that will see the term end by July. Hosna Afet, Select News. As Senior 4 students are prepared to sit for their examinations, head teachers from the different private and government schools picked the papers from Kasese police station where they were offloaded for safety. Mr. Balia Robert, the head teacher of Standard High School, Nyamwamba Division in Kasese Municipality, expressed fear over the students' readiness to sit for UCE.
Joined together as a team, as staff, we have tried our level best and we have ensured that we cover what is supposed to be covered for these candidates. And that's why I've said, as Standard High School in Nyamwamba, we are not worried at all because we know we prepared our candidates very properly and we know they are set to do their exams and excel.
Musainene Hakim, the head teacher Kasese Muslim School, said the turnout and registration has been low due to the pandemic and poor financial standing of parents.
That's what they could register. Though the number was more than that. The issue about the unstable timetable. Wait for stability.
Maureen Musime, however, showed her relief in resuming school, saying marriage was the next option available. Bosero Augustine applauded the examination board, saying the first day was a success.
And we opened this morning at around 8:35, so we are still within the time. So you're not supposed to open before it is 8:30. So I know that all the stations, the exams will reach there in time. By around 9:30, all schools will be starting the examination.
Semi-candidate classes have reported to schools today and will also sit for examination on May 21st. Robert Kule, Husna Afet, Select News.
Talking about how ready are we, how ready were we to take our children back to school, and what is the recommendation of the government when it comes to private schools and how they're supposed to buffer the loans they have and how they're supposed to pay for the bills without parents paying school fees. And parents are saying, please be understanding. Where we're supposed to get that money? We are all in the COVID-19 crisis. When people were working, we were also on lockdown. See, bars were closed and the curfew time started at 9. And before that it was at 6. That means Abantu Banji failed to make money. And they're saying and calling out to private teachers to let them take their kids to school and then ensure that their kids study before they can pay the tuition. Please allow our students to start school. It's what they're asking for. Hopefully the private schools will listen to their woes even when they have challenges themselves, and the students will go to school, because unfortunately, according to a report that I'm looking at right here, which I will be going through shortly, is that exams start, but several candidates miss out, which means they wouldn't be sitting. They're not going to sit for their UCE, and maybe they'll sit for it next year. Very sad story indeed. As we were uploading, the Ministry of Education for letting pregnant students go to school. And for me, that still stands out. With 8th March coming in, Women's Day, I celebrate such big wins for the girl child, such big wins for the woman. I celebrated myself, and I say it's an upload by the Ministry of Education to let those girls go to school. Yesterday we were talking with Chris and we were arguing about it, and he was saying, no, girls who get pregnant shouldn't be going to school because they made a choice. Why do we have to be the ones to carry the sacrifice? Why can't I go to school because I'm pregnant? Now, I hope that this program will not only last during the COVID-19 situation, but hopefully it will go through phase by phase, and it will be developed even after the COVID-19 situation, because just like I said it, we don't get pregnant because we want it most times, but it's because, one, there's poor sex education, two, parents are shy. African parents are shy to discuss sex with their children. Besides that, there is rape. And nobody can say that all of us are educated about our rights. Everybody knows that if you're raped, you're supposed to take a PEP. But you know that like those things people don't know. And someone ends up becoming pregnant from a rape, and there's nothing you can do. They don't feel like aborting is right. Christianity, Islam calls, and it denies aborting. However, there are reasons that you can abort in both religions. So when a girl becomes pregnant, it's not entirely her fault. Not entirely her fault, absolutely. So she has to be given a chance to progress her future, because when she gives birth to that child, it's not the government who is going to cater for that child. It is her, it is me who is going to cater for that child. And that is the reason why I need to go to school, study, and look at a brighter future for my children or for my unborn baby. So I thank the government profusely. I thank them well enough for letting pregnant girls go to school. Now, there's a